Welcome everyone to Color Commentary. We are your pauper commentators, Michael Petchik and Adrian Guarzales. How's it going, Adrian?
Oh, good. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing pretty well. Nice relaxing Monday, and we're here to record another episode of our show that I look forward to every week.
Just another relaxing Monday.
Yeah, basically. All right, let's take care of the upkeep, and we're going to try and get through this quickly because we've got a doozy of a topic today. First off, we were brought to you in part by Original Magic Art, who are a supplier of all things magic accessories. They've got tokens, dice bags, playmats, art prints from throughout the history of Magic and the history of the world at large. If you're looking for something to spice up your play area, I'd definitely go check them out. And if you go to originalmagicart.store/commentary or use commentary in all caps as your affiliate code as you check out, you're going to get 10% off your order, and we're going to get a little kickback. So you're helping keep the lights on over here, and you're also getting your stuff for cheaper. So win-win situation. One last time, that is originalmagicart.store/commentary, or use the affiliate code commentary in all caps, spelled as it is in the name of this podcast. Adrian, what do you have for us?
Well, we also have the support of our patrons. For $1 an episode, you too can hear the full show, including our pre and post shows, and you get access to our patron exclusive Discord channel, and I'll give you a little shout out at the end of the episode sometimes.
All right. Finally, we are brought to you in part by Hipsters of the Coast. They have all sorts of neat articles from throughout the world of Magic, all sorts of different formats. Definitely go check them out. It's a little bit of everything, and if you find something you like, let them know that you found, give us a shout out on social media that you checked out other articles as a result of listening to the podcast. Just let them know that it's worth having us around. And one last thing before we get into this, on Twitter, I did send out a poll for listeners of the show. We want your opinions. We'd love to hear from you, and we definitely want to make the show better and sort of make content that you folks like and that we're proud of. So there's stuff about you, stuff about us, stuff about the podcast, and we definitely appreciate if you'd fill that out. It's not super long, so it's not a big time sink. But yeah, if you'd like to do that, we definitely appreciate it over here. All right, Adrian, the time has come. We have skirted around this, and we can't dodge it any longer. We've got to talk about it.
As the premier pauper podcast, it is our solemn duty to discuss the happenings of the format. And today's episode will be solemn. Mike, what are we talking about?
We're talking about the fact that everyone else is talking about the banned and restricted list.
Yes,
or the banned and restricted updates.
It comes out in about 2 weeks as of date of recording. And there is a lot of discussion specifically surrounding Gush, which, in case you've forgotten, is a 5 mana that's 4 and a U. Instant, draw 2 cards, alternate casting cost, you return 2 islands to your hand instead of paying Gush's cost. And this card has been the subject of a lot of debate recently, and so we're going to really delve into it on this show. Now, I just want to preface, of course I have an opinion, and but basically what Mike and I are going to try and do is we're going to try and give you the facts surrounding the card, previous bans and restrictions, and really also, it's a sort of plea to the community, like, it's gotten a little bit nasty out there. We can have differences of opinion and still discuss whether or not this card needs to get banned, but it's getting really personal on some levels. And so I would just ask that, you stay informed. You definitely have an opinion, but at the end of the day, try and understand where people are coming from and show a little grace, because we are still one community.
Yeah, I definitely want to provide a reasonable, structured discussion on this, but I do agree with you. Like, the current level of discourse in the pauper community has gone pretty sharply downhill, and not even in a way that's like fun. Like, it's not like bad memes on the internet. It's just people being nasty.
And I'm going to candidly say that that's the major reason I don't think we've done this episode. Mike expressed to me several times before the show today that he thinks it's going to really tank. But, that's sort of our job. So we're here to talk about the hard stuff.
Yeah. All right. So let's start at the obvious place. So the reason that I think this discussion is has revitalized and is back again is 100% the fact that Ultimate Masters came out, and with it came foil. And foil is another free spell. And
will you remind us what foil does?
I certainly will. So it's 2 blue, counter target spell, or you can discard an island and another card from your hand and play it without paying its mana cost. So the obvious like synergy here is you can Gush, have 2 islands in hand, and pitch either 2 islands or an island and another card to get a free counter spell.
And for the record, Gush is banned in every other format that it could possibly. I mean, is it banned in Commander? Actually,
it's not. Sure. It's not banned in Commander because
it's not that good.
Yeah, it's not dreadfully exciting.
I should say it's banned in Legacy. I actually don't even think it's restricted in Vintage. It's a pretty powerful card. It's a very powerful card. I don't want to 100% say it's busted in Legacy, but it is extremely strong.
We've both played our share of Legacy, and like, let me ask you this: would you want this to be a card that, say, some of the Storm variants have access to?
Oh yeah, you're right. I forgot about Storm. Never mind.
Yeah, like
and pauper, that's obviously not what we're doing, but it's still really strong.
Yeah, and I think like this has constantly been one of the things that whenever banning discussions come up, Gush has been involved in the conversation on some level.
And really what sort of catapulted this to the front of consciousness, like you mentioned, foil, but also the blue-black Delver deck that has really been able to leverage foil and Gush to their best use cases, has really started to, in our opinion, taking over the meta. I mean, we'll cite some Goldfish numbers for you later, but we'll get to that in a second. I think what we would like to do first is visit the Wizards ban justifications in Pauper. Now, Mike went and did some research on this. He pulled exactly why Wizards said that they banned a card in Pauper, with the exception of the things that were banned at the format's outset. Those reasons may be lost to time, but my understanding in conversations with Alex Ullman is that this was just when they first created the format, this is what they recommended Wizards do, and so that's what Wizards did.
Yeah, and all of these announcements are still online. You can go check them out. And that's where I got all of these. The ban and restricted announcement for the first wave of bans is still up, but doesn't really have any information attached to it. It just says X, Y, and Z are banned. I think it's a Grape Shot, Invigorate, and Cranial Plating, and I believe Empty the Warrens.
Yeah. So these were cards that were problematic in sort of the proto days of Pauper, back when it was purely a community format. Like Wizard, it was not a sanctioned format. It was not even a Magic Online format. It was just people queuing up on Magic Online to play all commons against each other. Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna go through these, and we did like very quickly when looking through these strike sort of a common chord among these, and I'm gonna go backwards in time from the most recent to the oldest, and we're gonna start with Peregrine Drake. And this quote is beginning in media res. Since then, the deck has increased in performance. Its presence in the competitive metagame has doubled, and its win rate has also increased. It is now significantly harming the diversity of the competitive metagame. For those reasons, we are banning Peregrine Drake from Pauper. And this phrase, harming the diversity of the metagame, is something that, like, that's kind of the crux of this. We're going to read the rest of these, but every single one of these references in some way diversity within the metagame. Do you just want me to go ahead and read out all these quotes I've pulled here?
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think it's good for people to understand what we're talking about. And then there's also another point I want to make, another common thread we haven't discussed. So go ahead.
All right. Next, Cloud of Fairies was the ban before Peregrine Drake. Because of all the card drawers here, it's difficult for non-blue decks to defeat this deck. It pushes the metagame to an imbalanced state where blue is heavily overplayed. Cloud of Fairies is likely the most problematic card in the deck. In the interest of color diversity, Cloud of Fairies is banned from Pauper.
And there was a combo deck and Delver, of course, that utilized Cloud of Fairies. But go ahead to the next one, Treasure Cruise.
All right. Over the past few months, Treasure Cruise decks have become more efficient, and the Pauper metagame has become significantly less diverse. In the interest of bringing back that healthy metagame, Wizards of the Coast has decided to make a change. While other cards in the decks that play Treasure Cruise are played in many other decks, the goal is to make a healthy metagame, not just identify the single most played card, even excluding Island. Instead, we look for the card that most strongly identified with the change in the metagame and the loss of diversity. That card, Treasure Cruise, is now banned. And then looking back, we've also got the dual banning of Temporal Fissure and Cloud Post, which were part of the old Post Storm deck. And for Fissure, the DCI looked into which cards are making it so difficult to deal with. First, the Storm mechanic has few answers in Pauper. In our Gate Crash update, Empty the Warrens and Grape Shot were banned. While we knew Temporal Fissure was also powerful, it was less strong than those two. Rather than ban the card, we chose to see how the metagame would shake out in small amounts. In small amounts, the Temporal Fissure deck is interesting, but in large amounts, it narrows the competitive metagame. And then of Cloud Post, they said, the second problem is Cloud Post. Without much downside, Cloud Post both accelerates your mana and gives a single land that taps for multiple mana, converting the free spells into mana generators. While other lands, such as the Ravnica bounce lands, can tap for 2 mana, they have larger drawbacks. When Cloud Post was banned in Modern, the Urza's lands, Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Tower, turned out to be strong enough to make a competitive Modern deck. We believe that scaling back to that level might make for a more dynamic metagame for Pauper as well. So yeah,
the common thread, all in the name of the metagame. The other thing is all these cards are blue except for Cloud Post, and that's not true of the whole ban list. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I think as time has gone on, like after the first wave of bannings that were non-blue, and then the Storm bannings, everything since then has pretty much been blue. And
right.
And the way that it was being played, Cloud Post was functionally a blue card. It was not like showing up in like Affinity or something like that. You weren't using it to cast colorless fatties. You were using it in a blue combo deck.
Probably with Cloud of Fairies.
Probably with Cloud of Fairies, which then later got the axe itself.
So I really want to hone in on the message here. Wizards, and especially with Treasure Cruise, Wizards does not just identify the single most played card. Instead, they look for a card that has shifted the metagame into such a state that they think diversity has been stifled. And really what we got to ask ourselves, and what I guess Wizards has to ask itself, does the printing of foil specifically make it so that blue decks are once again super dominant in the metagame, and is the format diversity being hurt? And I would argue that format diversity being hurt is not restricted to what outright wins a challenge. I think we can also look at top eights and see and league results and see just on MTG Goldfish that blue sort of has that stranglehold again.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the league results. I think that's a great place to look, because I'm looking at the most recent league results as of date of recording, which would be the ones published on the 2nd of January. And how many decks would you guess we usually get in our league results?
What do you mean by like how many decks are just out there?
Like how many lists get published?
I think it's like 5.
Well, so it was 5 for a while, and then they instituted that like weird, like as long as it's 10 cards different across the 75. Idea. So a few months ago, before the introduction of the competitive leagues, which is another thing that I do want to get into, but we were seeing around somewhere in the 15 to 25 range. It varied week to week. Some weeks there were fewer decks, some weeks there were more decks. Last week we got 9. So because of how the current reporting is done, the less diverse a metagame becomes, the fewer decks get reported, right? Because if everyone's on the same, pretty much the same 75, even if there's a whole ton of trophies being gotten, you're only going to have a couple of those results reported. So,
right. And it's unfortunate that we don't have access to the full data set that could maybe resolve this problem externally. I'm sure Wizards is thinking of it internally.
Yeah, and with regards to the competitive leagues, yes, we did see an immediate drop off when the competitive leagues were used for reporting over the casual or the friendly leagues. There we go. That's the terminology. So there was an immediate drop off, and I think part of that is the fact that the moment you put the word competitive in there, people are going to start playing more competitive decks. You're going to see less of these rogue brews where people are, having fun and perhaps playing stuff that is not the most optimally competitive. But 9 decks, there were 9 like clusters of 75 cards that 5-0'd in the past week.
So yeah,
that's not great.
Right. And so those are the facts surrounding the matter. I think there's a lot of rhetoric that typically goes with this argument, but when you look at MTG Goldfish, when you look at Wizards' history of bans, they really want to promote diversity in the metagame. And I would argue, even Gush notwithstanding, the diversity in Pauper is not great. I think a lot of people are quick to point out, well, Boros Monarch's actually the best deck. It just won a challenge. Or, well, there's just as many Boros Monarch decks. And I would say the main reason for that is that Boros Monarch and Delver, Boros Monarch has a lot of lines that beat Delver is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and I think we also, like, right now we still see Blue-Black Delver pulling up ahead, but we do see a good amount of the red-white tokens list. We do see Tron still putting up numbers. Elves is still kicking around.
So I think that an analogy I want to make is that we've frequently discussed Gush, Monarch, and Tron are the three pillars of our format, but it feels like currently only the three pillars are standing, and really anything else is sort of crumbling away.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. There is always going to be like a best deck or cluster of best decks for any given format. It's just like statistically there's never going to be a perfectly balanced format, but you don't want a format where you can play one of three decks, right?
Right. Well, and if you look at the top 8, so to speak, on Goldfish, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 Gush decks, 2 Monarch decks, Tron, and then Elves, which Elves is sort of always just sort of done its own thing.
Yeah, I think Elves has always just kind of been kicking around ever since Eternal Masters gave it away to...
It's a good deck.
Yeah, it's a good deck. And I think the thing is that we're seeing a loss of diversity in a very specific way. It's not that the Gush decks are just utterly dominant. It's the fact that fewer and fewer decks are being played at a competitive level. It's narrowing down.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at the numbers that we have available to us, that becomes evident even if you don't think Gush itself is a problem.
Yeah. Like the fact that we're sitting here and looking like Affinity and Stompy are decks that I associate with this format. And while, yes, the metagame has shifted, Affinity is sitting at 4% of reported results. Stompy is sitting at 2% of reported results. Is it Delver is sitting at like 4% of reported results? Like decks that just a month ago were putting up much more solid numbers. There's now like...
So let me ask you this, Mike. I think that because I think this is a good tangent that we can go on here. Is Gush really the problem? Because it wasn't a problem until foil got printed. What is your opinion on Gush, not just in this moment, but historically? And what is it about foil that has exacerbated the issue, in your opinion?
So I think that, as with the blue cantrips, another sort of hallmark of powerful Magic cards are the 1-mana blue cantrips. There's always been this thing where even when like Gush and Brainstorm and Ponder and all these cards have been restricted in Vintage, they've been allowed to run around free in other formats. Like Ponder and Preordain and Brainstorm are the cornerstone of Legacy, like it or not. Though that's just how it's been for years. And I think the thing is that Gush is, as these cards are, is directly proportional to what you are finding off of them. These are cards that the better the average card quality in your deck is, and the more likely that drawing 2 cards is going to get you closer to winning the game, the better Gush gets. And I think that Gush, for a while, we've talked about it being a pillar, and I have always felt that it's problematic for like a long time now. I feel like when we first started like getting into Pauper, what decks ran Gush? Like it was pretty much just Izzet Blitz, right?
Yeah.
And Delver ran it as like a 1 or 2.
Well, Izzet Delver wasn't. Sorry, I was thinking Izzet Delver like wasn't really a deck, and yeah.
But Mono Blue was, and it would run Gush as a way to refuel. But I think that Gush has quietly been a problem for a while, in that I think it is the best blue card that you can play if your deck can support it.
I've said it before. I think Gush is the single best card in the format.
I think you could definitely make that argument, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But yeah, I think like as Pauper has gotten these downshifts, as it's gotten more cards introduced into the format, obviously like the standard legal sets are not huge for our format. They don't do a lot, but they do something. And the master sets have definitely pushed the format in a different way, and conspiracy as well, with the introduction of the monarch mechanic in and of itself, like turned Pauper on its head for a while. But I think as we've gone, the options that are viable to play are getting stronger and stronger. And the fact that Gush is only as good as the cards that surround it, if those cards are getting better, Gush is getting incrementally better and better. Like the very low end of Gush is still good. The better the cards get, the better Gush gets in turn.
Right. And then I think another thing that we can talk about is we've sort of touched on this before. Just it has amazing synergy with foil.
Yeah. I think foil was like the thing that brought this to a head. Like yeah, I just, it fits so perfectly, right?
Yeah. And I do want to say, you know, the culprit right now is Gush. That's really the topic of this episode. But I do want to quickly just say I do think that Monarch has the potential to be a huge problem as well. And, you know, I obviously don't want to ban everything. I just want to keep that in mind, that we're talking about Gush, but obviously there could be some other things we could talk about today also.
And I think the interesting thing is the fact that while there's no direct analog for either of those effects, and specifically like Monarch is a really tricky one, like there's never really been something quite like it mechanically at common.
Right.
I think like these decks will survive. There are certain decks that if Gush were to be banned would cease to exist. We're talking about like
I think Tribe would
yeah, it's Tribe. It's 100% Tribe. That is the deck that dies if it doesn't have access to Gush. It'll be relegated to tier 2 or 3, and we won't hear from it much at all.
And one of the counter arguments is that, and this is sort of like this weird double think, twist of logic type things. Some people, you know, I don't remember who. I have seen it said on the internet that if you ban Gush, you will actually hurt format diversity, which, I mean, that just means a lot of bad decks can play Gush, right?
Yeah, so it's interesting. If you remove Gush, it is one of the like quote unquote pillars of the format. And I do think that if you ban Gush, afterwards there is a power vacuum and things are going to get really weird. Like,
no, I just mean, like, I think it's just weird that you can say banning this extremely powerful card that all these decks are running will hurt format diversity. Well, why? Oh, the answer is because they're all running this one same powerful card.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a circular logic, if you will. But I do think like you are obviously a big fan of the white red decks. You've been a fan for a long time. Like, do you think that if Gush and Monarch went at the same time, do you think we just descend into the living nightmarescape that is Tron all day, every day?
I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because the metagame, I think, would largely revert to where it was before those cards got downshifted. I mean, Tron has Denrova Horror, but I think that the Monarch decks go back to being tokens decks, and I think the Delver decks, well, I guess Gush has been around for so long, it's kind of hard to say.
I mean, Delver, I think, is one of the decks that is least affected by such a ban.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because you just swap to different card advantage.
Well,
packages.
and I do want to say, anecdotally, Gush used to cost way, way, way more than it does now with all the with the reprinting and with the promo especially. Gush is like 50 cents on Moto. Gush used to be like, I don't know, $10. It used to be quite a bit. So I would be interested to see the correlation between, and it's the same thing as Days before Days got reprinted. I'd be interested to see the correlation, the number of decks that could have run Gush in the past running Gush versus not, just because of budgetary reasons. That's neither here nor there. It's just a something I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Like, card availability is not always a factor, but it is sometimes a factor. And yeah, with Gush being super cheap, obviously if you can run Gush and it's advantageous to you, which, spoiler alert, for a lot of decks it is, it's cheap now. There's nothing really holding you back on that one from a monetary standpoint. So I guess you had mentioned that you think that Monarch is a potentially problematic mechanic. Do you want to delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think we might as well give it a few seconds here. The mechanic is not really intended for 1 versus 1 gameplay, and I think that really shows. Maybe less so in Pauper than it does in Legacy. I think in Legacy, only one card plays it, but that card's also a removal spell. Mm-hmm. So I think that is a larger issue. But Monarch can make for some play patterns that feel non-interactive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like it does kind of force your opponent into playing a very specific game.
And if you talk about format diversity specifically, well, all the mid-range decks are Monarch decks now.
Yeah, because you want to be playing Monarch because it's a powerful mechanic. It lets you like get card advantage over control decks. And as long as you're in an advantageous position against more aggressive decks, it kind of lets you close the door on them. It just goes, all right, cool. We've slugged it out for a little bit. I'm not dead. I'm just going to do this. And if you don't answer this card draw real quickly, I'm just going to run away with this. Like, I think it's one of those things where as long as Monarch cards are a part of this format, they're going to be played. They just represent such a great game for mid-range decks that why wouldn't you? Like, I've played Black-White Pestilence way back in the day. That deck was laughably bad. It's now like, since recent changes, not doing as well, but like there was a sprint there where like it was pretty solidly like a tier 1.5 deck and would put up numbers week to week. So I think like that's one where it's way down. Like its stock is abysmal. There is one Pauper league finish from White Black Pestilence in the past like 2 months.
Yeah.
And I don't want this to become like a doomsaying thing, but that's
I don't think we're doomsaying. I really think, we're humans, we have opinions. These are the facts surrounding banned cards and surrounding the numbers behind Gush.
Yeah. All right. Let's switch gears a little bit. Have you seen the argument of we should ban Augur of Bolas?
Yes. The cited reason is that it is what is hurting aggro. And if you look at Goldfish, what aggro? So yeah, I'd say that aggro isn't really a contender in Pauper currently.
Okay. So do you think that is solely as a result of that, or do you think that it's only like a brick in the wall, right?
I think it's a brick. I think you sort of brought it up. Gush is largely defined by the cards it can find, but you can Augur of Bolas and find a Gush.
Yeah.
The big turns for the Gush decks, even if they have nothing, are Augur, find Gush, Gush. Now I have 3 cards in my hand.
Yeah.
And a blocker. And I can ninja it back.
Yeah,
in some cases.
I think the fact that it has a body that weighs in like pretty well against aggro decks certainly isn't helping it. It's certainly making it look like much more of a problem than I personally think it is. But I can see where people are coming from with this argument, because it is something that we haven't seen the format without since it was printed. Like,
right, and I don't think these decks are going to play Seagate Oracle instead. In fact, they historically did not.
Yeah, a lot of them didn't, and I think a good chunk of that is the fact that 2 versus 3 mana is a pretty sizable jump in a tempo deck.
Well, it's also 2 versus 3 cards.
That's true, and like the upside of I can find a land or a creature is not always something that blue tempo-y decks want to do.
By the time you're playing Augur of Bolas and you find a land, a Delver, and a Gush, what are you taking out of that?
Yeah,
you have to take Gush.
Yeah.
My bad.
Well, you have to take Gush, but you were probably okay with taking Gush anyway, because
right, I agree.
Gush can draw you into those other cards that you need. It's
the other one that's come up before is Delver of Secrets specifically, just because it's such a good turn 1 for the blue decks.
Yeah, and I do want to actually get in on this because I do think that as Gush is a irreplaceable card on like a technical level, I think that Delver represents something similar for our format. Like, if Delver was banned tomorrow, give me any suggestion that you think is a reasonable replacement for Delver.
Honestly, I haven't thought about it too much, Mike. I think that if Delver was banned tomorrow, the decks that play Spellstutter Sprite and Fairy Miscreant would play a different type of 1-drop fairy.
Okay. Are you thinking like Zephyr Sprite?
I really don't know. I don't know enough 1-drop common fairies.
Zephyr Sprite, I think, is the least bad of them. It's just a 1/1 flyer for 1 with the subtype fairy.
So it's literally Flying Man. I think they would play that deck.
Like it's Flying Man with upside and not much else to write home about.
I think they would play it purely for its synergy with Spellstutter.
All right, and I just
for
actually
the other decks, I don't know. It's much harder.
Okay, yeah. So I got curious and I wanted to look. Do you know how many creatures in blue have more than 1 power at 1 mana?
How many creatures in blue?
In blue.
I do not know.
There's 4 of them, and Delver's one of them because that card is a 3/2 no matter what it looks like. The others are Drifter Ildal, which is a 2/1 with Shadow that you have to pay blue every turn or sack it. Phantasmal Bear, which is a 2/2 for blue that if it becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it.
Maybe they would just play Phantasmal Bear.
I'm not sure about that. But
sorry.
Oh, sorry. There's just one more. There's Spindrift Drake, which is a blue for a flyer, which you also pay a blue or sack it, and it's a 2/1. So
I understand that Phantasmal Bear is not great, but anything in the format, basically anything in the format that could kill a 2/2, could kill Phantasmal Bear would just kill a 2/2 anyway.
That's fair. Like, I mean, the only thing I can think of is if your opponent really needs to, they could target it with a unoverloaded Electrickery.
That's true, or a Gut Shot.
But like that's not a huge argument. I see where you're coming from. Like, the downside is less of a downside than it initially seems. But man, like there really is no super solid replacement in blue, in pauper, that you really want to play, is there? Like, 1/1 flyers for 1 are a dime a dozen at this point, but those aren't exactly great. Like, maybe Jace's Phantasm does an okay job, although then your opponent has to have 10 cards in their graveyard, which isn't a super reliable thing to be counting on. I guess so. If Delver gets banned, does that just... It's weird because blue has always been dominant in our format. Do you think that Delver is the crux of that?
No, I think blue was a deck before Delver.
Yeah.
Is that not true?
I mean, it was. It's just like, this is one of the best turn 1 threats that you can deploy in the format.
I think it's okay. I think even without Delver, the deck would still be very strong.
Okay, I think that's a fair position to take.
You still have Gush.
Yeah. If you still have Gush, go for it. And one of the interesting things is, and we've talked about this in passing on the show before, the mainly French and German format Peasant, which is all commons except you get 5 uncommons. They actually banned Delver a few years ago, and I tell you what, that deck, that shell, is pretty much still there. It's just a fairies deck now. And to be clear, to be 100% upfront and honest, they have not banned Cloud of Fairies, which I think changes things dramatically. but like they're playing Zephyr Sprite and they're playing Latchkey Fairy, which I don't know if you remember that card at all, but it's a 3/1 flyer rogue fairy, and it has Prowl, another weird old mechanic. So you can, if you dealt damage with a fairy or a rogue this turn, you can pay 2 and a blue instead of its actual mana cost, which is 3 and a blue.
Common though, right?
No, that's a common.
Oh.
And if you paid its Prowl cost, you draw a card. So it's a 3 mana, 3/1 flyer that cantrips if you hit your opponent this turn. And like, this is obviously not a direct 1-to-1, because like this deck also gets to play 4 copies of Favorable Winds, which changes the texture of this deck quite a bit. But I do think that that's a deck that could continue to survive. I don't think it's dependent solely on Delver. You're still going to have some sort of blue X tempo deck.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, again, just because like cantrips are good. I guess one of the other things, people have mentioned Gitaxian Probe. This is the one that I have the hardest time seeing. And I don't know. Do you have any insight on this? Is it just the fact that it gets banned in other formats, so why not us as well?
Yeah, I think that in other formats it was problematic with the cards it was paired with, like Young Pyromancer, Cabal Therapy. In Modern, it was Insane and Infect. So I don't think Gitaxian Probe, and also in Storm, I don't think Gitaxian Probe really warrants a ban in any real meaningful way.
Yeah, I think it's still like a good card, and obviously like it's best buddies with Nivix Cyclops, but I don't think that this is one that needs to go now. There's also the option of, what if foil left the format? And obviously it just got here, but that hasn't been something that stopped bans before. If
I honestly
it called
don't
for
know. Do we just revert back to the old metagame? That's unclear to me, because once the genie's out of the bottle on a deck, it's kind of hard to put back in. I would be surprised if Blue Black Delver were to fully fall apart, but I do think that it was the shot in the arm that the Blue Black 1-drop or 2-drop deck, UBXD, needed in order to really catapult itself to being a competitive deck. So I think that deck alone would suffer. I don't think a lot of decks are utilizing foil nearly to the extent that deck is.
And I also think, like, I guess, how would you feel about foil in a format without Gush?
Very night and day. I think foil would be annoying, but not as powerful as it is right now.
Or are you saying you don't like free counterspells? That doesn't feel good to you, and your opponent just has it all?
I mean, no one wants to ban days, so.
Yeah, fair. All right. And there is one more kind of elephant in the room. We haven't talked about Tron. Well, we've talked about it a little bit.
I do not think Tron will ever get banned. I think Tron has its soft spots, and I think the format does need one big mana type strategy. I would call Tron a good deck, a very good deck, a tier 1 deck. I would never call Tron strangling the format deck, unless it had Peregrine Drake in it.
Yeah, but I mean, that was more a Peregrine Drake problem than a Tron problem, if we're being honest.
If we're going to use the argument that banning a card actually hurts deck diversity, I cannot think of a better example for that than Tron. Because you can kind of do whatever you want with Tron.
Yeah, I get where people are coming from. Like, Tron does go over the top in, like, stupid haymakery ways. Like, when Tron starts doing its thing, like, it's just beating you in the face over and over again, and you're not coming back after a certain point. Like, capsize locks don't feel fun for anyone, or like flickering a Dinrova horror over and over and making them pitch all those cards as well isn't fun for a vast majority of people. And I get it. I understand where people are coming from, and I don't want to be dismissive of that, but I don't think that Tron is like this huge overwhelming menace. I've played Tron decks quite a bit. There's a lot of matchups that feel like you're just kind of like hoping to top deck well so that you can keep doing your thing and survive just long enough. So I'm not as worried about Tron being around. Now, let me propose to you the pure insanity, the craziness. What if we ditch Monarch, Tron, and Gush all together. Just pull the rug out from those 3 pillars of the art of the format. What are your thoughts on something like that?
I think mono green gets a lot better.
Mono green does get a lot better
because I think that a lot of those decks are good against mono green. That's really I think Stompy top of the heap for at least a little bit.
At least a little bit. And I mean but like really though, because like control decks you'd
still have the Boros tokens deck. You would still have Delver, mono blue at least. So I don't know, but I think Stompy has a place in that New World Order.
Yeah. I just wanted to put it out there just as kind of the logical extreme of, if we're going to get rid of something, why not all? Why not we just completely just pull the rug out? But I don't know, maybe like I don't want this to come off as like I have personal bias here, but I don't want Tron to leave the format. I think it's always been like part of the metagame.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think that's why a lot of people feel so strongly. They just don't want to see an old card leave the format, even if it's ultimately problematic.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't really been a world without Gush for us, and like I get that that's a little scary. Before we kind of continue with this, do you want to sneak in a little combat step here?
Yeah, we are not halfway through the episode. I think we're well past it, but I do think that we should take a little break here before we get into our last couple talking points. Why don't you go first?
All right, I got a question for you. I love me some fizzy water. I love those sparkling beverages.
You're making me thirsty just thinking about them.
I got one right here. But my question for you is Topo Chico or LaCroix? And maybe we need to explain both of these for folks at home.
Yeah, Topo Chico is fizzy water that legendarily an Aztec king gave to his dying daughter, and the miracles of the water of life healed her. Have you never read the Topo Chico box?
I have not seen the Topo Chico lore. I didn't know this existed.
Well, the other one is crappy French water. That means the cross.
Yes, it does.
And I believe you say La Croix.
I see potentially an opinion here.
I think Topo Chico is just the best mineral water you can drink, fizzy water. I will say, though, budgetary reasons, regional reasons, I drink a lot of HEB water, a lot of HEB fizzy water.
Yeah. Topo Chico is real good, though, if you're in Texas.
Yes. Check it out. It is hands down one of my favorite beverages. But let me see if I can find the story for you.
I did not know about like the deep Topo Chico lore.
Here it is. This legend speaks the virtues of the water that since 1895 has given its name to one of the most important drinks in all of Mexico, Topo Chico mineral water. There was a beautiful Aztec princess who suffered a terrible disease, a disease so strange that no doctors of her father, Montezuma, I can't pronounce this name, it's in Nautl, Ilhuicamina, successor in 1440, the king Itzcoatl, had been able to cure. Desperate, the king turned to the older priests in the kingdom to find a cure for his beautiful daughter. They told him that according to the timeless stories of travelers, in a faraway northern land, there were strange and hidden waters which flowed at high temperatures. Waters in which one only needed to bathe in or drink to regain vigor, joy, strength, and refreshment. Encouraged by this news, Montezuma ordered an immediate expedition to take his daughter to this amazing place. After traveling long and rugged roads, the princess and her expedition reached a fertile valley flanked by mountains. To the east, they saw a mountain in the form of a woman's face, now Cerro de la Silla, and a mole-shaped hill from whose slopes flowed the prodigal waters. After spending some time there taking baths and drinking from the water, the daughter of Montezuma, his priests and chiefs, returned to Anahuac lands optimistic, strong, happy, and refreshed. The news about the princess's recovery spread throughout the kingdom as passed from generation to generation up until modern times.
That was the most wild thing I've heard all night. That is just bizarre.
Yeah, Topo Chico is the best.
And for those who don't know or who don't speak Spanish, what does Topo Chico mean?
I don't know what topo means, but Chico is like a little,
It's a mole. It means the baby mole.
Oh, I got Chico right. Little
you
mole.
Did.
There you go.
All
That's
right.
why the mole-shaped hill from whose slopes flowed the prodigal waters.
All right, what do you have for me now that we've gotten our full background on sparkling waters?
I also have a refreshment versus non-refreshment one. Hydroblast versus Pyroblast. But like my last one, flavor-wise, which one resonates with you more?
Flavor-wise?
You red mage, you blue mage, Mike.
Ooh,
Jai Ballard. I think the appropriate term is toast.
I think that asking me if I'm a blue or red mage is different than flavor, but
all right, flavor. Let's go with flavor.
Like flavorly, I'm gonna go with Pyroblast. Like shooting a big ball of fire at something seems a lot more satisfying than some water. But that's like the easy answer. Like fireball good, water
ball.
Water ball is just wet. Like I don't know. That's kind of my gut reaction, but like when it comes down to it, like I think actually in recent years I don't cast that many blue spells. Like I've been playing a lot of like non-blue decks. It's weird to admit, but I started to enjoy them. And I've also definitely been grinding a lot with like mono red on arena. So I think maybe I'm a red mage now. Weird.
It might be a red deck.
If your curve ends at 3,
you might be a red deck.
All right. Let's try and round this out.
Much like Topo Chico, we are now refreshed and can continue this discussion. Color commentary brought to you by Topo Chico. Hey, let's get our endorsement deal.
Yeah, let's get that hashtag branding, hashtag sponsorship.
But let's go ahead and bring it home. I actually think we accomplished most of what we wanted to in the discussion above, and we can really just recap our points. What do you think, Mike?
I think that's fair. Like I think let's hit the big points and kind of leave the viewers to discuss this.
Yeah, I think that one of the big takeaways I want to have is really the civility of the discussion. I don't think name calling is okay. I think there's a lot of vitriol in the community right now, but I do want to say we touched on it very lightly. Bans are a feel bad. I don't want anything really to get banned, but if you look at the Wizards' history and you look at the numbers as we are allowed to see them, a trend emerges where if something is hurting the diversity of the metagame, Wizards looks into banning it. That could be Gush. That could be Monarch. I guess it could even be Tron. But at the end of the day, I think that people are trying to argue from a good place because they care about the format and not because they want to, yuck your yum or anything. No one's here being like, oh, I can't wait to take away Gush from the pauper community. It's really coming from a place of wanting the format to be fun and healthy.
Yeah, it's the people who have these strong opinions because they care. Just like when
like you.
Yeah. Like I have strong opinions on this as well, but like sitting there and mudslinging is not going to like make the community a better place. And it bothers me so much when I see like rhetoric about like I wish pauper got more recognition followed up by like kind of toxic stuff being discussed, and that it's just counterintuitive, honestly, right?
It makes it hard for us as content creators to produce meaningful content when we're worried that everything we do is just going to get dismissed out of hand because we don't have an opinion that someone agrees with.
Yeah. Like this is something that there should be back and forth discourse on. Like back and forth discourse is one of the best ways to actually advance the discussion. It's just there needs to be like some level of restraint within this discussion because we're all passionate about this format. Like we sit down every single week and we talk about this format for an hour. And yes, I am friends with Adrian. Like we are good friends, but we also care deeply about this format and want to see it succeed. So whether or not you agree with the positions that we put forth in this, like these are our positions for what we think would benefit this format that you, the listener, and we both care about. So yeah, like maybe we just tone it down a little bit and try to keep these discussions a little bit more reined in, but we get it. Like this is something you care about. You cared enough to listen to, I don't know how many minutes at this point, like 50. give or take. Yeah, like 50 minutes of us talking about 1 or 2 cards in the format. So yeah, just we've done this in the past. Like, be kind to your fellow human.
Right. So back to the Gush topic. If you look at the numbers, you look at Wizards history. I don't want to be Chicken Little. The ban might be coming. I think that you should definitely hedge your bets. I wouldn't be surprised if the card got banned, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the card didn't get banned either. I think Wizards is pretty slow unless something requires its immediate attention, a la some of the bannings in Kaladesh in order to ban something. Other than that, I think they pretty much tend to take their time. Wouldn't you agree, Mike?
Yeah, they definitely want to like give things a time to shake out, and it takes time, right? There needs to be the data,
and I'm okay that this is just these are our opinions based on what we've seen, based on Wizards history. We could be totally off base. They might print something tomorrow in Guilds of Ravnica or Ravnica Allegiance, excuse me, that says destroy target Gush. I don't know. That they could, is my point. So I don't claim to know all the answers. It just wouldn't surprise me either way. The other thing I really want to talk about as far as metagame diversity, like Wizards said, is not just related to one card being the most popular. It's about a card or a series of cards that warp the metagame. So, for example, if the best deck runs Gush, and then all the other decks have to run Pyroblast to beat Gush or die, that's metagame warping.
Yeah, exactly. Like when Drake was legal, you played a deck with Drake in it, or a deck that you thought could beat the decks with Drake in it, and that was like the epitome of an unhealthy metagame. And we haven't gotten to that point yet. I don't want people to go away thinking that we have, but we are starting to see signs kind of similar to what we saw last time when some new hotness showed up that are not looking amazing in the end of the day.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have anything else we want to hit, like, before we call a close to this show?
No, I think we've said our piece. Feel free to talk to us about it. We do believe in an ongoing discussion. So Twitter us, get on our Discord, wink. Or we're also in the MTG Pauper Discord if you want to talk to us there.
Yeah. We're always available. We always want to hear your opinions. All right. Going to take us out of this show.
It. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. This podcast brought support of our patrons, especially in a new province. Consider supporting us just like him if you like the show. Also, check him out. He's a great YouTuber. Check the video or description of this podcast for details on where to find us. We'd like to remind you, if you're listening to this on a platform with reviews, they're always appreciated as they boost our visibility. If you've got a deck list and idea for a topic, we have seen your emails, but please feel free to contact us again, either via our website or by emailing us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to my LGS Pat's Games, Mike's LGS JP Comics, and of course, L. He does our theme song Quantitative. You can find it and other great tracks over at soundcloud.net/ELLELLELL. Till next week, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.